Here we are. We are live. This is not Memorex. All right. Hello, everybody. We'll give a few minutes for people to start trickling in here. I know this is later than what I was expecting, but I wanted to make sure that we got everything in there. Want to make sure everybody can hear me fine. That's always important before we get started. And so I've thrown out the announcements to all my Discord channels and all that kind of stuff. And so, not all my channels, but all the channels that I'm a member of. So we'll try to get the word out there um, and see how that goes. But let's see here. Um, just try to see if there's any way I can share this. Um, we'll see. I was going to share this on other places as well. We have a Barbarian King. Hello, Barbarian King. How are you today? Good, I hope. We have a Barbarian King. Hello, Barbarian King. How are you today? So I'm definitely going to have to mute my stream. Can you hear me okay, buddy? I just don't want to keep hearing myself. Becomes very distracting, as you might imagine. I don't know if there's a way that I can turn up the volume or the sensitivity at all going um, through OBS. I think I've probably got it where as high as I can. So if you're having a hard time hearing me, I apologize. Not a lot I can do at the moment for that. Glad you're doing okay, buddy. So, um, this I've decided to kind of, and I've kind of naturally kind of broke them up, but uh, I decided to kind of officially start calling it seasons. Um, so this was the end of the third season. So first season obviously is 1 through 20, and second season was 21 through 40, and the third season, uh, just here's flat out makes sense. The third season was 41 through 60. So since we have uh, 100 issues, then that breaks it up nicely into 5 seasons. I'm glad you can hear me. Thank you for letting me know. So this was the end of season 3. I did take a bit of a week off, mostly because uh, I had some hopes that some people would be able to make it. They had this weekend off compared to other weekends, so I kind of rescheduled for this weekend to be able to do this. So I'm gonna give it just a um, few more minutes uh, to see how that goes, and um, we'll see if we anybody else happens to pop up uh, in here. Otherwise, I will just get going and people can catch up as they come in. I know it's, you know, middle of the day here in the States, and so people are probably out and about doing their thing and whatever, but hopefully we can get some people showing up. We have Judah showing up. There you go. Hi, Judah. Um, glad you can make it. We have Alan. Hey, Alan. Glad you can make it there, Plasman. Sorry, I'm typing over here, and apparently I can't type and talk at the same time. Uh, my brain doesn't work that well. Um, all right, so glad you guys are have made it. I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing fired up, and we shall start having some fun. So let's go ahead and uh, get started with this. And I won't talk, but we'll do chat. I'm going to start off here with just cutting out all the parts, and um, I kind of went back and forth throughout this review, just kind of showing a little bit of everything, and then some of it I just kind of skipped because you don't really need to see all of it, or probably may not want to. But so this was just me cutting out all the parts. After I get all the parts cut out, what I'm going to do is then move into cleaning them. So the first part of that is going to be cleaning off all the little extra, what they call flashing, and the little bit of the sprue that is left on sometimes when you cut it off. So I just do this most of the time. I just use my sanding sticks. I come in and just kind of clean those up. After that, I went ahead and washed them and uh, uh, used some warm soapy water. And then once I got those washed, I started putting them all back together. So as I've grown accustomed to using these micro brushes to apply the glue, so I'm just going to put all those on. And as you can see, some of these parts are pretty small, and if you don't get the glue in the right spot, it's kind of a pain. But we're going to go ahead and persevere through that. I decided that I was going to try to mimic the the one that was in the movie as best I could, um, even though this isn't quite the right scale or what have you. But I was going to do my best with that. And so when I get into the painting of it, I'm going to paint it. Of course, this thing's far too small to be able to it's far too small to be able to mask off and paint that way. So I decided I better paint it by hand. So the first thing I did was I primered it, and now I'm painting it by hand. And I'm using uh, gloss black on this because from the images that I could find, those were gloss black. And so we're just going to kind of go through that process and get this all painted where it needed to be. And you can see where that was. What I didn't show was I had to touch up some of the black because, as you might imagine, it's a little bit hard to stay on the lines there. And here I'm just touching up with some silver to kind of clean it up. And now I'm mounting it within the main section, and we'll have a look at what it looks like finished. On to 42. All right, this section is going to be one of the insert section. So it's got some equipment in it and that kind of stuff. And so we just gonna cut all these parts out, clean them up like we normally do, and start getting them installed or glued in place. And so we take this this section here. Now this part was kind of cool because it was uh, pushed in from the outside, so that was kind of neat. But we have a lot of these little pipings and that kind of stuff in this section. And so what I ended up doing was I painted it as recommended in the magazine, which was basically paint it black with then a light dusting of gray. And so I did that, and then I came back in with some rust and browns and silvers and all that kind of stuff to kind of give it a little bit more detail. And you'll notice farther on in the review that I actually touched these up a little bit more to match what I was seeing on the actual movie model. So you'll see that much farther in the review, but this is what it looked like at this time when I finished it up. On to 43. Issue 43 was interesting because really the only thing that I needed to do was put in these metal studs and then the magnets that go on the parts. And in this section, what I'm doing is I'm putting them on the covers that go over the landing gear when the landing gear is retracted, obviously. And so, real simple issue. Another thing that I also did was I went ahead and blacked out some of the panels that I had. And this is just me lining up the parts that go back together. So on to 44. And issue 44 marks the beginning of when we're actually going to start adding a lot of the external details, mostly for the engines and whatnot. And I showed this section here because I wanted to kind of show in a little bit better detail the section that we're going to be working on. And so there's actually two parts, they're mirrored parts. We're only going to work on one at this time. So what I did was I went ahead and cut out all of the parts that I needed. There was going to be some parts that are left on that sprue, and we would use them later on. And so this is just showing me putting all the parts on. What I didn't show was me actually cutting all the parts off and then cleaning them all up and all that kind of stuff. You'd seen plenty of that. Now this is when I decided that when I originally built these corridor sections, the flooring for whatever reason, I decided to try to dry brush and make it look like that was, the idea being that the path that they walked on, which would be most likely in the middle, would be much more worn, probably more shiny and all that kind of stuff. Mostly with the idea that Han doesn't keep a clean ship. And so I did a lot of dry brushing for those, and I wasn't overly satisfied with it. For the last little corridor section, much smaller section, I actually used the airbrush to do. And so here you can see when I did that through the main hold section, and you can see where I kind of brushed through there. It was interesting if you switched it and moved the angle and whatnot. It was harder to see. Here you can see where I actually kind of screwed up, and this kind of forced me to do a little bit of customizing, and of which I'm happy that I ended up doing because I was very happy with the results after they came out. So I missed with the airbrush. It was a little hard to see where I was painting, and I painted a section there that is much farther back and out of the kind of the area, but um, so I needed to be able to cover that up, and what I did ended up working out really well. I was pretty happy that I was able to recover as well as I did doing the airbrushing here, but I really wish that I would have done that in the beginning and painted those walkways with the airbrush at that time. Would have given me a little bit better results. I mean, like I said, I'm happy that they came out as well as they did, but they could have came out better. Let's go to issue 45. All right, issue 45 is basically doing the mirror section to what we did in issue 44. The only difference being we're also doing this center section as well. So basically I cut out all the parts real quick. Same scenario as before. I'm going to cut out all the parts that I need, and I'm just kind of showing those parts that we need there. Not all parts are going to be used at this time, and so I get those parts cut out. I go ahead and clean them with the warm soapy water like normal, and I start gluing them in place. And so this was me gluing on the center section, and I don't believe that we attach them yet. They get attached much later in the process, but so we go ahead and get all these parts attached, and that finishes up all of the little extra detail work for this one. Let's go on to issue 46. Well, a lot of prep was done to do all the blackout for all the hull pieces, and this is the video where I'm going to attach all of these hull pieces. Not this video specifically, but in issue 46, we attach all the hull pieces, and we're just going to kind of cycle through that. As you can see here, I've kind of jumped forward. We're a little over halfway through it, and we still have several pieces to go, but I'm just going to pull them out one at a time, get those all attached in. It really helps the whole thing feel like the Falcon once I started doing this. It really started coming together and was rather kind of momentous, if nothing else. So very significant situation there. Took a lot of screws, and it didn't take that long really, but the amount of screws that it took to put all these pieces on, some of the pieces you had to kind of wrestle with a little bit to get into place, but once I did, it all went together. And here I'm just putting on that centerpiece just to see how it looks and try it out. I thought it was pretty good. On to issue 47. Issue 47 is where I started putting a lot of the main kind of greeblies and what have you. So I wouldn't really call these greeblies, but these are the parts that are going to really give the profile and whatnot to the bottom of the Falcon. So here we're putting on these kind of stand-up parts, and those are essentially, where uh, the landing gear and all that kind of stuff goes in. And then we have some additional kind of detail parts that we're putting in. I call them greeblies. That's what they call them anyway. And so we're going to put some of these more substantial pieces on, and those will really add a lot of the additional detail that the Falcon has. So um, that's what it looks like when I added all those parts. Let's go ahead and go on to issue 48. So issue 48, we work a little bit on the hull plating, mostly around this turret area. So on the bottom turret, they actually have it so you can put in that window on your own. Um, and here I've gone ahead and put it in place. Now I decided I needed to work on that hover pad or the hover pallet and repulsor lift type thing. And so here I'm going to make that. I decided the best thing to do is make it out of scratch since I needed something that's a unique shape and size and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm just kind of sanding it down to the height that I want. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually need to widen it a little bit. So I cut out that piece, cut out another center piece, and now I'm gluing those pieces together. And I'm using that Plastruct glue. And so what that is, that's a solvent cement, and so it glues really well on the proper stuff. And here you can see what it looks like after I got the pieces, the basic pieces all put together to include kind of put some end caps on it. And then what I'm going to do after that, I'll get them all kind of leveled off, and then I'm going to fill it all up um, with putty, with some of the plastic putty for the modeling. And now this section here is where I'm working on some of the other cargo containers. I couldn't find any that I really liked, so I decided to kind of make my own, and it's just anything that kind of gave me that look and feel of Star Wars. I wanted a barrel, so I decided I had some round tubing, and so I cut the round tubing, and then I was just going to take some of these little styrene strips and glue it around there, and it kind of worked. I had to do a lot of putty to do that. These crates worked out really, really well. I was able to take the really small styrene strips and kind of make a lip around the top. I was pretty happy how those came out. And here I'm just kind of, I had already done the painting of them, and here I'm kind of doing some of the detail painting and whatnot. I added some, lights and little silver things and stuff. And now I'm just going to glue all these pieces on, and I kind of played around with the format and how I wanted them set on there. And so now I've glued them in place, and that's what they look like after they're all put together and weathered up. So yeah, that was a fun little experiment, and I really like the results. So let's go on to issue 49. Issue 49, we're going to add some of the more fine detail parts. And again, these are parts that's just going to add more detail to the exterior, specifically the lower hull of the Falcon. So some of these parts are kind of mirrored of each other, and then some of them aren't. Some of them are kind of unique. So it was kind of interesting to see how not everything was 100% matching all the way across the board. So um, these long sections, they just kind of fit in there rather nicely. Those two other sections, I put those in there earlier as well, and then these, like, I don't know, they're like fins or something. They went in pretty easy. So yeah, the details came out really nice. I'm pretty impressed with it, and rather like what the results were like. So let's go on to issue 50. Issue 50 is where we kind of return back to the upper plating, hull, or not plating, but hull framework. So we did the basically put together the entire lower hull framework and the plating, and so now it's time to go ahead and get started on that upper section. And so we really began that work. And this shows here that we actually glued in that cargo containers and stuff from a couple episodes ago. And so let's go on to issue 51. So issue 51, we are going to continue on with the hull framework. We only have a handful of pieces to put in, but something that we have to continue working towards, because doing the upper hull is going to be just as important. So you guys have seen me put together this framework many times. So you put together these kind of rib pieces, and that helps add some rigidity to it and that kind of stuff. So I needed to, since I had those other cargo containers, I wanted to have some that I was going to be using in the main hold. So here I'm going to work on making another barrel. Wanted it to be a little bit different than the previous barrel that I was working on. And so essentially what I ended up doing was I just made it fatter than what the other one was, and then kind of went from there. I also made just a single kind of container, um, same style as the other one. I just made it longer. So instead of being just a short, fat one, I made a long one, almost like a Foot Locker type of thing. So let's go ahead and go on to issue 52. So again, with issue 52, we're adding some more of the framework, and this time we're going to actually add in um, the center ring. And so it's very important that you get that lined up where it's supposed to go. I don't even remember if I actually paid attention to that, but I think I did. It's been a while. So yeah, we're just gonna do more of the framework, and then because there wasn't much to do there, I decided to go ahead and do the detail painting on the cargo containers that I worked on. And so there was a lot of detail painting that I needed to do. Now I went ahead and was able to buy some crates that are for these are actually for O gauge trains. But I went ahead and bought those, and this is me kind of adding some additional details to the barrel that I put together. So I get those details put together, and then I just have to get it painted and all of them kind of glued in place. So uh, yeah, let's go ahead and get ready to go to issue 53. So here we are with issue 53, and it's similar to some of the other issues. So basically, this is one of those equipment recess parts that you can see through the hull plating. And so, basically I do the same thing. I'm just going to cut them out. I'm going to clean them up. I'm going to, sand them off and all that kind of stuff, get all the seams and whatever kind of sanded clean. And then I'm going to take them in and I'll use warm soapy water and get those cleaned up. So here, I'm just putting those pieces in. And this one was kind of interesting because I had that big old piece that you glue in first, and then all these smaller pieces go in as well. So it really adds a lot of detail and whatnot to be able to put it that way. And I don't think you'd be able to model it or mold it and make it come out that nice. So let's go on to issue 54. All right, issue 54. We're going to work again on some of um, the framework for the upper framework, and so we're just going to add a few pieces here, and that will really kind of again kind of it gives you that sense of progress because you can see another part of it really coming together. Here I've went ahead and primered that piece from last time, and now I'm going to go ahead and glue in those cargo containers that I worked on previously as well. And so this will kind of really kind of add some good look and feel to it. So as you can see, I did 2 barrels as well as I've got 5 containers. So here's an image that you can see just kind of what some of the looks are. And I wanted the barrels to look a little bit different, so I kind of made them look like they were just kind of this rounded whatever type of barrel. So that's what they all look like. Another part of this issue was to add in the battery box. Now, the unfortunate thing is you put in the battery box and it's held in with these screws and these machine screws and these nuts, but then you have to take it back out to test things. So let's go to issue 55. So issue 55, there wasn't a lot going on. There's those little braces that go on the boarding ramp. They ended up falling off. I ended up having to glue them on later. But so I just took the rest of the time to kind of prep for painting. One of the reasons is these sections that I'm painting over or taping over here, I'm supposed to put those inserts in place. So I didn't want to do that until I painted the external part. I went ahead and blacked out the existing top panels that I had. And these are the parts you're supposed to put in. So let's go on to issue 56, part 1. So issue 56, part 1. One of the things I wanted to do was seal up all of uh, the the plating to make sure they kind of stayed solid. And then after that, it was just time to paint. So I'd already primered it, and now it's time to actually get the base coat painted. So I could have showed some of the primer action, but I felt like the painting aspect was a lot more important. This was the only part in this series, this 20-part section of uh, my series here that I actually had more than one video for an issue. So the whole painting part of it. because not only was I going to be painting the base coat, but I also needed to be able to paint get ready and paint some of the color detail parts in order to glue on the pieces that I needed to glue on as part of this issue. So here we got the entire base coat done. Now I flip it over and get all of the edges where those needed to be painted and kind of finish it all off. And then we'll come back for issue 56, part 2. So this is issue 56, part 2. And so this one I start off with basically trying to identify the color of red that I need. So the red's not like a perfect vibrant red. It's kind of like this rusty red. And I found out that one of the best ways to do that was to undercoat it with a gray. And so that's what I did. And I was trying that out. Then this section here is all about taping off the different sections that I needed to tape off in order, mask them off so that way I could paint the different colors and stuff. I really only needed to paint a couple of different sections, but I figured while I was here, I would try to paint as many different of these panels that I needed to. There's going to be a lot of weathering and stuff done later, but this was going to be important. So, and that's right over the landing or the boarding ramp section. Um, and then, as you can see, I've got a couple spots that are going to be incorporating the cover for the landing gear. And I have like three different colors going on here. I've got a yellow, the red, and then a light gray. And then here right in the middle, I'm going to have a little red section, and then two gray sections. And so I need to kind of get those prepped. The nice thing was the red and the gray on this side are basically side by side, and I could paint the gray. I have to paint the grays first anyway, so I could paint the grays first and then come back and uh, overpaint with the red. And so, but I needed to go ahead and mask everything off. I didn't want to go back and forth. I was already here masking, so I forgot to just mask everything all at the same time. And so, as you can tell, I used a couple different types of masking tape. This yellow is a model masking tape, and it works really, really good. It's pretty flexible, seals amazing. It seals better than the blue tape, that's for sure. I just use the blue tape for like the bigger sections or whatever. Um, but then, like, these are the sections down here, and these are like the uh, like the thrust vector plates and whatnot. So these are the sections that I really needed to mask off because I had to glue on the actuators for the thrust vector plates. And so I needed to get these sections underneath them painted so that way when I glued them on, I didn't have to worry about that. So that was the main impetus of getting everything painted was it was time to get those done. Now it's time to actually get the painting done. So I'm going to start off with the yellow. I only had two sections that needed yellow, so I start off with those, and it came out really, really nice. They are a bit brighter than what they need to be, but I can lighten them up with some white or something like that, and that'll be fine. Then we have these light gray sections, so I go ahead and do those. This is going to be the same light gray. Now I'm going to come in with this darker gray, and that darker gray is going to allow me to come back over it with the red and makes that red really kind of look more of a rust red, and it really helps it stand out. So, like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be kind of colored in there. So while I was painting this gray section for the red, as you can see, I spilled some paint. Now, one of the beauties of the base coat paint that I'm using is it makes it easy to wipe up. I just grabbed a paper towel with some alcohol on it, and I was able to wipe it almost every last bit of it up. What's not wiped up is fine. It's just going to blend into the weathering that I'm going to be putting on later, so I'm perfectly fine with that. And so you can kind of see I'm going back through, painting up all the red sections and getting those colored. All those sections are done, so now it's time to unmask it and see what it looks like. I was over the moon on how this came out. I was so happy. All my prep work really paid off, and I was very, very pleased by that. So, um, Yeah, very, very happy. And I found a little section that was even dry. Let's go to part three. Part three of issue 56 is all about putting on all these details, stuff that I had painted quite a long time ago, and just hadn't put on yet. So it's all about getting those put on. And here we go. We're going to start getting these glued in place and all that kind of stuff. And um, that really kind of makes everything stand out and really kind of makes you feel like you're accomplishing something. So part of that is to put these, whatever these veins are or whatever, but both the top and bottom have them. And so I got to get those glued in place. And then there's going to be, a handful of other parts that you need to get glued on. Like these parts here, I should have, had I realized, I would have glued these on well before I painted it. That would have made things a lot easier because I had to scrape away paint and all that kind of stuff. But I would have definitely got those glued on first. Now I've got like just a couple little pieces here, these little pipes and stuff to glue in place. And but once I get that put in, that really adds a lot of detail. And here you can see, as I mentioned, I kind of cleaned up those. They were a little bit more vibrant than I expected, but they will get toned down as I weather it, so I'm not too terribly worried about that. But that's what the whole section in the back looks like after I got it all painted and everything, and I'm extremely happy. Let's go to issue 57. And here we have issue 57. We put in the circuit board, and this allows us to test the boarding ramp. You can see it going up, and now I make it go back down. This was a pretty big highlight, just that. Issue 58's next. Issue 58, we're going to attach a bunch of the greeblies to one of the sections that goes over the docking port. Sorry. So yeah, we attach all these greeblies, and some of these greeblies are really, really neat. Adds a lot of 3D detail to them. I went ahead and blacked them out and all that kind of stuff, so they'll blend in together. I really like that. So you can see that 3D detail right there, and we also did some right there where the rectenna goes. So issue 59. And issue 59, we're going to continue on with the um, framework. And so there was quite a few pieces. I think there was like 5 or 6 pieces that we had to add this time. Ended up being quite a few screws. I think it was like 32 or 36, something like that. So we had a lot of these screws in here now. It's really interesting looking at the upper hull, particularly the framework. I don't know how this thing's going to be sturdy enough. I mean, it's going to be interesting, but it ends up coming together. So let's go on to issue 60. So here we are with issue 60. Not a lot going on here. We do add a few more of the framework pieces. So I think we had added 3 this time. And all I did was I also did some blackout of some of the plating pieces to get those prepped and ready to go. That's it for this review. Well, here we are. We're going to review the data and the details of this previous, I'm calling it a season. And so we're going to start at issue 41. In issue 41, we had one video. We worked on the quad laser cannon controls. Our total build time was 2 hours and 10 minutes. It took 5 videos to do that. We had 125 minutes off camera, and our final video was 29 minutes and 30 seconds long. We used one screw, glued 14 parts together, and the paint that we used was primer, gloss black, red, chrome, and silver. And of course the bonus, I got the time for the bonus videos over here, or the review videos, I've started calling them, and um, the number of micro brushes that we used. So this kind of falls in line, and we can see each of these videos, we have a certain amount of off-camera time compared to on-camera time, and actually I had this wrong. So this is total time. This box here is total time. This is record time, and so the difference would be the amount of off-camera time. And so we can kind of go through here and get an idea of how much time that we spent. I've recorded anytime I've used paint. I've recorded what the paint was that I used. This will come in handy when I go back and look at things if I want to try to use the same colors or something like that. Hopefully that'll be handy. We have a couple of highlights here. So hull plating, we spent 3 hours and 23 minutes. So it was like 3 hours and 10 minutes more than, or 2 hours and 10 minutes off camera that we worked on, and for only 22 minutes of video. Um, so that's kind of interesting. But we glued 223 parts, or 123 parts that time. So that's kind of interesting. That was in issue 46. Um, we'll see if we can find some other ones here. Another one here on issue 48. 3 hours of total time, uh, with 2 hours of record time for a 30-minute video. So I did a lot of editing down. A lot of that is because I started working on the cargo details, and I did record a lot of it, but there was a lot of kind of working around and that kind of stuff. So we kind of keep going along. This one here, we had 22 minutes of video. Was able to edit it down to just under 10 minutes. Ended up being my shortest build video so far. And this was even using some styrene strips to work on some of the upper framework. I must have done some other stuff along with the framework itself. I'm not sure what I did to use the strips of styrene for. Um, anyway, we did use a fair amount of screws on that one, but we also did some gluing. I can only imagine that the gluing was part of some of the maybe the cargo details or something like that. If we come down here to issue 56, this was by far my largest issue. We had a total of 6 hours and 58 minutes of total build time. Took 18 videos to do. 3 hours and 58 minutes of it was recorded, so 3 hours off camera. And out of 3 videos, it was a total of 136 minutes. We glued on 8 parts, and I used 31, um, used 8 screws and glued on 31 parts. And so, um, and this was all of the paint that went into that. So this was when I was actually painting the hull. And so that's why we had so many different colors here and so much off-camera time. There was a lot of stuff that I had to do off-camera. And then we kind of get into some of these other ones here. I've color-coded these just to make it a little bit easier to kind of track where everything is. But if we come over here and we look, we can see issue 41 starts here. And these are the actual video times for each one. We only had one issue that had more than one video, and you can see the times for those here. And if we come in here, here's the 18 videos that I recorded, and this is also where I input any off-camera time. Some of this is off-camera time is estimated and whatnot, so it's kind of plus or minus a little bit, but I try to do as good of a job as I can keeping that all in check. So then we can see what the total times are here. Now, if we come over here, this is going to give us a decent breakdown of where we are to this point. We've had a total of 81 build videos. My largest issue had 5 videos. so far, and that was in the first somewhere in the first 20, like issue 13 or 14. I've had a total of 229 video captures, total video time of 37 hours and 36 minutes, almost 38 7 minutes. Broke down the total time for each subsection. So issues 1 through 20, the first uh, 20 issues was 20 hours and 36 minutes. The next 20, 21 through 40 was only 9 hours and 4 minutes. And this last section was 7 hours and 55 minutes, and that's video time. Now, if we come over here, we look at total build time. So the first 20 issues, or our total build time is 124 hours and 24 minutes. So that's quite a bit. The first 20 issues, we've had 65 hours of total build time. The next 20 issues, we had 26 hours of total build time. And this previous 20, we had 32 hours of build time. So we had 6 more hours of build time that I did off camera that did not make it to the videos. Um, and that, if you looked, we've got a discrepancy of about an hour and 10 minutes. So 6 more hours, but an hour and 10 minutes less of video time. Our average video length is 27 minutes and 51 seconds. Our shortest video, again, is just under 10 minutes. Our longest issue is 3 hours and 22 minutes. We've used a total of 520 or 82 screws so far, but we've glued on 638 parts. So some of those parts I would be counting. I think that counts some of the custom stuff that I've been doing. I can't quite remember if I count those or not. You'd think I'd be able to remember that, but I can't. I've used a total of 3 bottles of glue. I'm on my fourth right now. I've used a total of 5 cans of primer. At least one can I've had to throw away because it's a big can and it kind of got old and gummed up. 218 micro brushes. That's a plus or minus because I didn't start counting right away. I've used about 30 pipe cleaners and 5 X-Acto blades. That is an accurate count. So hopefully you guys are finding this part interesting. It is pretty involved, but it's something I wanted to kind of break down. I had a few people asking for it, and I thought I'd share. All right, let's go back to the review. Got to get my microphone unmuted there. So that is everything in the review video. So I went through basically every all 22 videos of those last 20 issues and did a quick little snippet of each one. And obviously the painting ones I spent a little bit more time on because that was a lot bigger. Um, Actually, the glue dries actually pretty quick. I use the glue I use is just Gorilla Glue, Gorilla Super Glue, and you can get like if you want to go get actual glue that they use, specifically for modeling, you can get real thin stuff or like really thick stuff that's designed to kind of help fill gaps or something. But I found that this Gorilla Super Glue works pretty fine. I really like it. Um, like it depends on the part. Like some of them, like you put it in there, and if you just get the right amount of glue in there, and you put it in, like 3 to 5 seconds, and it's good to go. You can pretty much handle it, and it's going to do its thing. But if it's something where maybe it doesn't have quite the best surface area for the glue and all that kind of stuff, or maybe you put a little bit too much glue on or something like that, then it will take a little bit longer. I mean, there's some of them that like I've had to hold them for 30 seconds to make sure that I felt comfortable with it or whatever. But um, so far, project cost, well, obviously buying the entire set was, um, I think $1,500. Somewhere between $1,500 and $1,800. I don't remember off the top of my head to buy all the entire model set, and then um, I've probably added between um, all the paint that I've purchased and some of the little styrene, tube and all those little pieces that I've used to make some of the extra stuff. I bet I've probably spent an extra at least 250 bucks on doing this. So I'm easily, pushing the $2,000 mark for this project so far. Uh, I will have more paint to go because um, like some of the paint that I have is running pretty low. Unfortunately, from the time I started this to now, I found out. So Tester is owned. I didn't know this, but I found out recently that Tester is owned by Rust-Oleum, and Tester makes a line of model paint called Model Master. It's some of their higher quality stuff. Well, Rust-Oleum decided they were going to discontinue, I guess, all of either discontinue the Model Master line or all of the Tester paint. I'm not sure, but so they're discontinuing it. So I can't. I have a bunch of Model Master paint, and I can't get replacement for any of it. So that's a bit unfortunate, but um, yeah. So I'm kind of struggling there, but I've kind of switched to Tamaya. I don't know if that's the proper way of saying it, but I think it's basically I think it's out of Japan. Um, but I've switched to Tamaya paint, and I really like Tamaya paint. Um, it's really nice, and obviously they still make it and all that kind of stuff. But uh, it's for whatever reason I was really liking the Model Master, and one of the interesting things is I bet I have at least 15 different shades of gray for that I've bought, and some of them haven't used any of it. Some of them I've gone through a bunch, and it's kind of interesting that um, I've got them and I've used. I bet I've easily used between 6 and 10 different shades of gray as I've painted through stuff. I wouldn't consider the exterior a gray. It's called insignia white. It's really kind of an off-white type of thing, and not even counting the primer. I wouldn't even count that as a shade. But like here recently, I've used at least 3 or 4 just painting the little square sections on the hull. So yeah, it's definitely getting up there. It's pretty crazy. Um, yeah, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed that review. It was, uh, I've kind of tried to do it a couple different ways. This third review I've done, and I've recorded, like the video, and then I've done the commentary during the stream. Um, One, I have to really kind of be familiar with exactly what I did when I recorded, when I did my review video. Because a lot of times I start kind of putting it together early, and then I have to come back and refamiliarize. But I decided that I was going to actually record the audio over it because then I get to chat with you guys in the text chat while that's going on. And otherwise, if I'm paying attention to what's on the video and I'm talking, then I don't get to catch what you guys are talking about always and whatnot. And then if I want to answer questions, it's difficult because then I either have to pause the video or I miss whatever the commentary is or whatever. So yeah, yeah, it's pretty good. But yeah, it's pretty crazy how all this stuff starts. I mean, like 20 years ago, things weren't anywhere near this expensive. Like cost of living, and obviously what we're talking about, Mark, is not living. I mean, we're doing stuff that we're enjoying, right? Like obviously, if you have to take care of a vehicle, that's part of cost of living, but um, because you have to have a vehicle and all that. But like 20 years ago, wouldn't it cost you near that much to do the work that you were doing? And like I was admiring the fact that you can't get like when I was in high school or early 20s, you spent like 2,000 to $2,500 on a car. you got a fairly solid car. I mean, it was going to be quote unquote a beater, but it was still a solid car. Now you spend like $2,000 on a car, like you're going to be worried about taking it on a 4-hour trip. Like, will it make it? It might blow up. Maybe we'll, So it's just crazy. Like now you have to spend like between $6,000 and $10,000 to get a solid used car. It's pretty crazy. Uh, as far as the airbrush dribbling, why doesn't the gun come with some kind of cap? Well, yeah. So the way that air gun works is as it's called a dual action. So you get the airflow going, and then you open up a needle, and as you open up that needle, the airflow pushing out actually sucks the paint through with it. And so if you had a cap on it, then it wouldn't be able to suck it through. Um, and so that's part of it. But there's other airbrushes, and the airbrush that I have was given to me by my boss actually. He used to do a lot of model railroading, and so he stopped doing that, and he didn't have a need for it anymore, so he just gave it to me. And so, which I'm very appreciative. It's a very nice airbrush, and I mean, I mean that saved me spending $150 on an airbrush. But there's some airbrushes out now that the um, the paint reservoir is on the top, and I feel like if it was on the top instead of the bottom the way that it is, it probably wouldn't spill out. Plus, I kind of realized that I had it when I put it in there, I had it kind of stuck off to the side, as opposed to I can kind of twist it a little bit and get it more in line with the actual airbrush. And so I think if I do that, it'll help prevent it from spilling out as much. Plus, I just need to be a little bit more cautious as I'm painting. I know painting um, those sections on the like on the hull when it's flat like that is very difficult because I need to paint aiming down to really paint it properly. But I know if I aim straight down, obviously I'll spill all my paint out. So I have to kind of, adjust, and the fact that I've got it's not even really a paint booth. I've just got a section where I paint to help kind of keep all the paint particles in one section. Um, I can't get all the way around the model when I paint. I'm sure you've seen me do a lot of the painting stuff when I'm over there using my airbrush. So I have to kind of get stuff situated and try to turn the model and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, yeah, um, yeah. I agree, Judah. I like being able to chat with you guys and all that kind of stuff. Um, yeah, King, definitely not cheap. This isn't a cheap model. You can get some cheaper ones. But I will say that if you want to um, do some of the cheaper models, there's all kinds of aftermarket add-on stuff that you can get that like you can get like laser etch stuff and some fine brass pieces that are laser etched and cut and all that kind of stuff. You can get 3D printed stuff that's really, really nice. Uh, so you could spend, let's say, $200 or $300 on a model, but then to get really good detailing, you'd have to spend, you know, a fair amount of money moving forward to get the extra details and stuff. So, um, but that doesn't mean you couldn't take one of those $200 or $300 models and make it look really nice as is as well, without spending all the extra money. Uh, I hadn't even really considered it, and I saw this one, and it was just kind of like on a whim. I was like, oh look, it's got the lights and all that kind of stuff, and comes with all. I thought that was just so cool, and I just kind of decided to get it. But yeah, so it worked out pretty well. I mean, like I said, it's a bit pricey. I was actually looking at another one for my wife would like for me to do the Enterprise from Star Trek, and I was looking at one, and it's actually 110 or 120 issues, and it like I don't know the exact price, but I think it was going to average out to about somewhere around $1,800 to get it, and it's basically the same size as my Falcon, so it's not like it's small. And then we're already trying to figure out where we're going to be able to put the Falcon and have space for it. I mean, you pretty much would need a room just for displaying that kind of stuff, which we don't have. But we kind of decided, there's, don't really want to spend $1,800 on it. So I'm going to try to find a kind of a cheaper one for her and just try to take my time and make it look as good as I possibly can. I think that I could probably do that. It just will take a little bit extra effort and whatnot, so it'll be good. Yeah, yeah. There's if you guys have seen, so issue 61 came out yesterday. And if you guys have seen that, I spilled some paint there as well, and it forced me to do some extra work because it spilled on one of those that first gray section that I painted. Um, in this review, you would have seen it. I spilled paint on there, and then I had to clean. I didn't even realize it until it was already dry, and so I couldn't just wipe it up and whatever. So I had to then sand it off and all that kind of stuff, and then I had to re-prime it and then repaint that section with the gray again. And so that was a real pain in the butt. So, like I said, I did issue 60. I've completed issue 62 the other day, and doing a lot more of the painting stuff. And so I was a lot more cautious on and kind of situated the Falcon a little bit better to be able to paint and all that kind of stuff. And so hopefully I don't have those kinds of issues anymore because that's uh, it was pretty kind of crappy to worry about. uh, if you want to melt some hearts, build Serenity. Ooh, Serenity from Firefly. I would love to do that one. Uh, would also like to, if I could find one. There's supposed to be one coming out. I would like to do um, the Razor Crest, which is the ship from the Mandalorian show. I'd like to do one of those as well. Um, yeah, and so I do plan on kind of hanging it like this. The Falcon actually comes with a TV mount that you can mount on the bottom, and so I'm kind of thinking I'm gonna put it on the wall and mount it like that. And so supposedly it's supposed to be able to hang like that. But yeah, it's that I do plan on putting it like that, and I think it would be pretty cool. Make it look really neat. Um, it takes 500 hours at 2K. Uh, that's $4 for an hour of entertainment. Way less than going to the movie, and plus we get to be entertained as well. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, yeah, also like that $2,000 that's been spread out over now, actually over probably 6 to 7 years. So it's been spread out over time. So like it's not like it was like I dropped $2,000 in one shot or anything. So it got spread out over time. So yeah, yeah, I feel like it's well worth it. It's just like if you think about that total, it's like holy crap, right? You're like, but in the big scheme of things, it's not too bad. Hey Denise, thanks for joining. You're at lunch break. Glad you could join us. And hop in at least for a little bit on your lunch break. Um, Yeah, I do like that idea, Judah, about painting it the same color of the wall or something like that so it blends in pretty well. That's a great idea. I hadn't even thought of that. That'd be brilliant. Yeah. Uh, yeah, Firefly, it would be pretty awesome. And I hadn't even thought about doing Serenity, but I'm gonna have to start